Imagine waking up tomorrow to find that 20% of the energy powering the modern world is suddenly trapped behind an impassable military blockade. We are bypassing the usual pleasantries today because the global operating system has just encountered a fatal, unrecoverable bug. The physical collapse of the linear supply chain is complete, and it was triggered by one undeniable reality. The President of the United States has officially resigned as the world's gas station attendant. Today, we are debating whether the recent U.S. and Israeli military operations that paralyzed the Strait of Hormuz represent a calculated strategy to enforce global burden sharing, or the permanent mathematical death of the linear global economy. I argue that the physical reality of global trade is irrevocably broken. External dependency is now a terminal systemic flaw.
You are, completely misdiagnosing a structural correction as a systemic collapse. The actions in the Strait of Hormuz represent a harsh but necessary renegotiation of global security. I argue that the United States is simply enforcing a beneficiary pays system, demanding fair burden sharing to correct decades of asymmetrical alliances. The fundamental operating system of global trade, which relies on ownership, accumulation, and comparative advantage, remains historically robust.
Relying on the phrase historically robust ignores the physical mechanics of what just happened in late February. The linear capitalist model, which dictates that a nation can economically extract resources from a distant desert, ship them across vulnerable oceans, and consume them safely under the umbrella of American military hegemony, is mathematically dead. The United States and Israel launched a military operation that functionally blockaded the Strait of Hormuz. When you choke off 20% of the world's oil supply, you do not just create market friction, you destroy the economic viability of the entire supply chain.
The supply chain is experiencing a stress test, not a demolition. By applying maximum pressure in that specific maritime choke point, the U.S. is forcing an immediate update to the existing global order. For over 70 years, European and Asian economies have relied on American naval dominance to underwrite their economic growth without contributing equitably to the maintenance of those sea lanes. The current friction is a temporary, high-stakes negotiation tactic. The United States is proving it will no longer absorb the cost of global stability, while other nations free-ride on American deterrence.
They are not free-riding. The hegemon has actively destroyed the sea lane it claims to be protecting. Let me define the mechanism of this collapse through the lens of circular capitalism theory. When I say circular capitalism, I do not mean environmentalism or recycling aluminum cans. I mean a strict economic reality where a nation must source, manufacture, and consume its critical resources entirely within its own defensible borders.
But that ignores the reality of how global resource distribution actually...
Why? Because the cost of protecting ocean freight has now mathematically exceeded the value of the goods themselves. The United States is no longer providing the externalized cost of global security. It is actively weaponizing the physical friction of resources to extract wealth from its allies.
It is basic economics applied to international security. The global energy market will stabilize the moment allied nations accept these new terms and contribute their fair share to the defense architecture. Look at the predictive accuracy of the administration's strategy. The president accurately forecasts the surge in global oil prices. He is using that exact market dynamic to strategically benefit U.S. energy independence, specifically leveraging American shale oil in the Permian Basin, while forcing complacent European and Asian allies to step up their military spending. It is a calculated consolidation of power, not an abandonment.
That is a purely political hallucination, unsupported by physical logistics. It was not a predictive forecast. It was the classic arsonist playing firefighter.
You cannot call a deterrence operation arson.
The late February military operation caused the blockage that spiked the prices.
The president's narrative
Is indistinguishable from someone who pours gasoline on a building, strikes a match, watches the flames consume the structure, and then turns to the crowd to say, "Look, the fire spread exactly as my weather forecast predicted." You cannot claim strategic foresight when you are the one detonating the explosive.
You are conflating the strategic use of force with sabotage.
The operation was a necessary deterrent against Iranian aggression. If the United States does not demonstrate a willingness to escalate, the deterrence umbrella fails completely. The administration is signaling that if allied nations want access to Middle Eastern oil, they must physically invest in the regional security apparatus.
The insurance markets have effectively redlined the Persian Gulf. War risk premiums have skyrocketed to the point where chartering a very large crude carrier wipes out the profit margin of the cargo before it even leaves the port. The United States has simply changed its sign from world's police to world's debt collector.
It is a recalculation of defense premiums, which
It is acting exactly like a predatory land shark who takes a sledgehammer to the neighborhood water pipes, blows them to pieces, and then yells through a megaphone at the residents who are drinking muddy water. Your thirst is your own fault. Buy my premium bottled water for 1 million yen, or armor up and fight the bomber yourself.
Nations must adapt to multipolarity, and that means recognizing that water infrastructure requires investment. The landlord in your analogy is merely reminding the neighborhood that the pipes were corroding and no one else was paying for the maintenance. If you want clean water, you pay for the upkeep. We are witnessing a turbulent transition toward a more equitable distribution of global defense costs. The administration's wildly shifting stances, sending peace letters to Khamenei one day and threatening maximum pressure the next, are a calculated deployment of the madmen theory. It is strategic death designed to keep adversaries completely off balance.
There is no strategic depth. Applying mid-20th century diplomatic theories to this administration is an analytical failure. There is no master chess player in this room. The president is operating exactly like a large language model. He is a political AI suffering from a complete lack of short-term memory.
Unpredictability has a long, highly documented history of securing massive diplomatic concessions. Nixon utilized it during the Cold War. Kissinger wrote extensively about the utility of appearing irrational.
He has a context window of 0.
By refusing to follow a predictable, bureaucratic script, the administration forces adversaries into a defensive posture. Iran, China, and even European allies are forced to negotiate against a worst-case scenario because they cannot map the president's next move. That is leverage, not malfunction.
Strategy requires a recognizable objective. This administration discards all past context and simply outputs the most inflammatory response to the latest prompt. It is a broken fortune teller robot that looks a customer in the eye, tells them they will die tomorrow, and then 5 minutes later offers to sell them a winning lottery ticket for $1 million. There is no logical connection between the outputs. You cannot build a global supply chain which requires 10-year infrastructure investments and stable pricing models on the output of a randomized algorithm.
the outputs are dictated by immediate leverage, not a randomized algorithm. When you hold the dominant position in both global energy production and military projection, you possess the structural privilege to dictate the tempo of negotiations. The rapid shifts in policy are a reflection of an agile administration responding to real-time geopolitical data. Why chain yourself to outdated diplomatic dogmas when you can adjust your negotiating posture day by day to maximize American leverage?
The real-world logistics operate in physical time, not political time. A supertanker takes weeks to transit the ocean. It cannot pivot based on a morning press conference. The administration's behavior is that of a local ramen shop owner who looks at the customer's face and changes the price of a bowl from 500 yen to 50,000 yen every single minute. Yesterday, he claims he runs a sincere, dependable business. Today, he tells the customer, if you want water, go fetch it from the river next door, or buy this cup of muddy water for $500. The allies you mentioned are no longer diplomatic partners. They are experimental variables in a highly unstable, high-frequency optimization algorithm.
International alliances are historically resilient precisely because they are rooted in permanent shared interests, not temporary price fluctuations or rhetorical volatility. Nations must simply endure this self-service diplomacy because the alternative is isolation. The physical infrastructure of global trade still exists. The ports are there. The vessels are there. Japan, Europe, and South Korea will pay the higher geopolitical premium. They will secure their supply lines through bilateral agreements or increased defense spending, and the traditional global market will eventually correct itself.
We are looking at a brutal market correction, not an apocalypse.
You are attempting to negotiate with physical extortion, and you cannot pay a premium to fix a model that is fundamentally broken at the structural level. The linear system is dead. Let us look at the exact economic paradox the administration has engineered. The situation is equivalent to a pizza shop owner telling a customer, "The porch of your delivery address is currently engulfed in flames. You can walk through the fire to get your regular order yourself, or you can buy the heavily marked up frozen pizza I am selling out of my personal kitchen." The United States is destroying the cheap delivery route for Middle Eastern oil to force allies to buy expensive American natural gas and shale.
And in the short term, nations will buy that American energy to survive. The global supply chain has enough elasticity to absorb these shocks. Yes, the reliance on U.S. energy exports will temporarily increase, and European markets will suffer a price premium for liquefied natural gas. But that premium buys time for diplomatic stabilization. You are vastly underestimating the capacity of the international community to compartmentalize erratic executive behavior from the enduring mechanical machinery of global commerce. Businesses will adapt, reroute, and price the risk into their models.
They cannot price the risk into their models when the administration actively attacks the only viable alternative to the vulnerability. Look at the ultimate physical contradiction of his domestic policies. The administration is legally attacking the expansion of electric vehicles in California, while simultaneously driving global gas prices into the stratosphere through Middle Eastern military adventures.
The attack on California's EV mandates is a defense of domestic manufacturing and traditional energy sectors that provide millions of American jobs.
If the goal was true energy independence and resilience against global shocks, you would accelerate the transition away from fossil fuels. Instead, it is a total detachment from physical resource reality. It is an obsession with political noise and domestic grievance over the basic, undeniable mathematics of energy efficiency.
It is an internal economic balancing act, grounded in the realities of the Rust Belt political economy. You cannot transition an entire massive industrial economy overnight without gutting the working class and hollowing out the industrial base. The administration is aggressively protecting the existing industrial base domestically while using its abrasive foreign policy to secure the international inputs required to keep that exact base running.
Protecting a linear industrial base that requires externalized violence to secure its inputs is the absolute definition of a systemic failure. You are defending a machine that costs more to fuel than it produces in value. The U.S. is demanding its allies rely on expensive fossil fuels while actively destroying the sea lanes required to transport those fuels. This forces a transition, but not the one you are imagining. The external dependency of the linear model is now a physical death sentence for any nation that refuses to adapt. Nations will not pay the geopolitical premium. They will localize their supply chains to survive.
I must insist that this localization is a temporary, defensive posture. The diplomatic stabilization of the Middle East is inevitable because perpetual chaos is ultimately unprofitable for all state actors involved, including the United States. The traditional global market will self-correct, as it did after the oil shocks of the 1970s. The friction we are seeing at the Strait of Hormuz will be resolved through a new framework of international maritime security, where the financial burden is shared. The flow of resources will resume because the global economy demands it. The operating system of global trade is deeply bruised. It is undergoing a painful system update, but it is not fundamentally.
The illusion of the linear model is permanently shattered. Historical comparisons to the 1970s fail to grasp the current mathematical reality of supply chain degradation. External dependency is a physical death sentence in an era where the hegemon has weaponized logistics. The U.S. president's erratic behavior is merely irrelevant noise compared to the stark physical reality his actions have exposed. The transition to circular capitalism, maximizing domestic resource circulation and minimizing the cost of survival by permanently severing reliance on foreign ocean freight, is no longer an environmental ideal or a policy choice. It is the only rational investment for physical survival.